You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 224, How to Measure Your Marketing for Optimization with Chris Mercer. If you're a business owner who wants to improve your time management and elevate your productivity so you can maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. Why are we talking about marketing metrics here on Productivity Straight Talk? Well, the answer is quite simple. As the owner of your business, one of the high value buckets of time that you will be investing your time in is marketing and visibility. It is your job as the business owner to strategize, oversee, and oftentimes even execute on the marketing and visibility activities that lets the world know what it is you do and how you can help them. Now, if you're anything like me, marketing can be one of those things that you just don't love. You may not get it. You don't understand how to track the results. You know that it's really important, but if you're spending all this time, investing all this time in it, how do you actually know if the strategy is working? I thought back to my own journey as, stepping into a CEO role, the owner of a business. And I had my eyes set on a lot of the activities and roles that I would have with that title. But marketing and visibility was not one that I was ever really excited about until I understood how important it was for me to let the world know what it is I can do and how I can help them. Because without that, we don't get the opportunity to ask people to work with us. We don't get the opportunity to invite them into your world so that you can serve them in the unique way that you were meant to serve the world. And when I can get excited about the impact I can make as a coach and as a trainer, I didn't get that opportunity unless I refined my skills and figured out how to market my business. And secondly, even if you're outsourcing marketing and visibility activities, how do you know that the person you're outsourcing it to, either on your team or outside of your team, that their efforts and strategies actually work? Well, all of this goes back to what we know to be true. You have to track your results. The data will tell you if it's working or not. And so I invited Chris Mercer on today so that we could chat about what are the important metrics to measure with regards to marketing. How can we simplify the process? Where do we start? How do we ask for help if we need it? And so this is a really great conversation about how to show up as the leader in your business to strategize and track the results of marketing and visibility. I think there's a lot of great ideas. I love how he simplifies understanding the numbers. And it was a really fun conversation. So I'm really excited to bring this interview to you. Now, before we jump into the interview, let me introduce you to Chris. Chris Mercer is the co-founder of measurementmarketing.io. He is a sought-after measurement marketing expert and has been helping marketers, marketing teams, and agencies plan out what's important to measure in their marketing, build measurement systems using Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, create actionable dashboard reports, and finally, use those reports to forecast and optimize their marketing results. In short, Mercer helps marketers measure their marketing so that they know what's working and what's not. And he also has a special gift for you at the end of the interview, so make sure you listen for that, and we will definitely have that in the show notes so you can get your hands on the special download of resources. And if you need additional support to grow as the CEO of your business, to really step into that role, regain control of your business and your time, get clear about what your goals are, and make a strategic plan on how you're going to get there, I invite you to join me inside Leverage Lab. Leverage Lab is my coaching, training, and accountability program where you will get the support to really step into the role of a CEO, own it, get clear about what your vision of success is. And I don't mean just what is the gross revenue. I mean, what is the revenue goals? What does your team look like? What does a typical day and week look like for you? I want you to truly enjoy being a business owner. So I invite you to check out Leverage Lab by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Hi, Chris. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. How are you today?
I am doing excellent. Appreciate you having me, Amber.
Absolutely. All right. So we heard your official bio in our intro, but I love to ask our guests to share a little bit about themselves that we wouldn't have known listening to your official bio. So, for example, where am I talking to you at?
I am currently broadcasting live, or pre-recorded, I guess, in this case, from Austin, Texas. Texas.
Awesome. And how did you get into marketing at metrics and numbers? Like, why am I talking to you today? Well, what's that story?
It's a really good question. We started like everybody else. We got here like everybody else got to where they are, which is like had no real plan to do it. It just sort of showed up. But the way that we did it was we started a WordPress site to teach people how to do WordPress sites. Mm-hmm. That led into people saying, well, this is a lot of work. Can you just build it for me? And that was us listening to the market going, well, okay, let's learn outsourcing and figure out how to build WordPress sites for people. And then as a marketer, I wanted to differentiate ourselves. And at the time in the US, there was this brand new thing people were talking about called conversion rate optimization, or CRO. And it was just a way to basically say, well, we're going to create your WordPress site and then we will optimize it for you. We're going to measure it and we're going to help you optimize it. And that was going to be our differentiator as a WordPress developer. So in order to do that, in order to optimize, of course, you have to measure. So we started learning Google Analytics and tools like that. And we would then present the clients and we would say, well, here's your WordPress site. Here's Google Analytics. And here's where you can tell how many Facebook ads are creating leads or how many sales are coming from your emails, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And practically overnight, when we made that little adjustment to our own marketing, the referrals, they changed. And it wasn't, hey, we need a WordPress site and you built such and such WordPress site. It was, hey, I was at a mastermind and such was telling me about their analytics and what they were doing. And we already have a site, but can you look at our analytics? Could you help us with this thing? Because we've been trying to do this for years, which I get because there's a lot to it. And that's where we realized, that's the pivot. So we created, because everyone's WordPress sites, but nobody teaches measurement. Nobody helps people understand their numbers in the way that we were. We sort of do it for normal people is how we do it. So that's where measurementmarketing.io was born.
Wonderful. Well, you're talking to normal people. So you're right in the
beautiful. It's
right
people.
Yay. Yeah. Normal people that it's not their primary business. Like we're talking to business owners where their skill set isn't the back end and analytics, except for, like you said, they hear it's so important. And, you know, when I speak about how our business owners can find their highest value activities in, you know, the 4 buckets, and the first one being marketing and visibility, is that when you're asking yourself, is it truly most productive use of my time? I think we can only answer that by, is it working? And how do we measure it? And there lies our whole conversation today.
Exactly. So, yes.
All right. So talk to me about what should we be measuring and why?
Really, really good question. So I'm going to start by backing up just a little bit and focusing on, because a lot of people, I think the tendency, and I did the same thing. So everyone that's listening or watching is kind of like, don't feel bad, because everybody does this, which is you typically think, you're supposed to measure stuff. It's very easy to activate a platform like Google Analytics, whether you copy and paste code on a page or turn on that plugin or integrate it in your Shopify store, whatever it is. And then you see a bunch of data coming through and then you jump into it because you're supposed to figure out what's working and what's not. But what happens is you look at it and you're like, I have no idea what any of this means. You try to explore some of the reports. One report seems to say A, the other one says no, B. And now you have no idea who's right or what's right. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to trash this whole thing and come back later. Now, the reason that happens is because there's a very important stage that everybody must go through, but it's not really taught all that much. And this is one of the secret sauce steps, though it's a boring thing to think about. And that is you must first plan before you start using the tool. And this goes back to what you were talking about, like, okay, what are the things we should be looking for? So we have a 3-step process to our plans. And if you follow this process, I'll give you kind of the shortcuts to get the most out of it. The first is what we call KIA, QIA, but it stands for question, information, and then action, right? So question, information, and action. And so what you do is you list out all the questions that you are trying to get answers to. Now, the secret sauce to this step is everybody thinks, well, if I'm an e-commerce store owner, I'm going to go Google, what are the questions e-commerce store owners should be asking? What are the questions SaaS product owners should be asking? What are the questions direct response should be measuring for? And you will get a million blog posts that have a million different questions, and that does not help anybody. So don't do that.
Right.
There are only two types of questions you could ever ask. You ask results questions, which is what everyone normally asks. So what are the results I'm getting? How many units did I sell? How much revenue did I make? That sort of stuff. Maybe how many leads I got. But then there are more important questions, which are the how questions. And that's the thing that people skip. So you need to know what your results are, but you also need to know how you got the results. So it's good to know you made $1,000 in sales that week, but it's better to know that 4,000 people saw the offer, 25% of them went to the cart, half of them closed, and that's how you generated $1,000. Because now you start to have an understanding of your marketing machinery and how your marketing is actually working, how those activities are actually coming together to produce the result, because that's a system. You cannot ever influence the result. You really can't. The only people that have the power to influence results are customers, because they have the credit cards, right?
Right.
But you can influence the activity. And that's the issue. But if you don't know the activities, how do you influence it? And so when you plan it out and you list out your results and how questions, then you move into that information stage where you're like, okay, I've got the questions written down, like how many results, how many sales I'm making, how many people saw the offer page, how many people maybe started checkout, to keep it simple. But then you think, okay, what's the information I need to collect in order to measure for that, to get those answers? And that's where a tool like Google Analytics comes in, because it does a lot of that automatically, where you can tell the offer page because the URL is the URL of the offer page, or the URL of the checkout page, or the URL of the thank you page. And it measures page views pretty easily. So you can very quickly get a count of what all that is. You can figure out all the conversion rates and you're off to the races, right? It's already measuring results. And so now you've got questions, the results and how questions. You've got your informations down, which is really just the behaviors that are happening on the site that you want to measure for, so you can answer those questions. And then this is the thing most important, is the action. So what action is, it's a bit of a role play. So before you go into Google Analytics, and this is the key, before you go into Google Analytics, you think to yourself, what actions will I take based upon the answers I'm about to see? So then you say to yourself, well, the results question might be like, I'm trying to get $1,000 in revenue. Then you're going to go into Google Analytics and you're going to think to yourself, before you do that, what will I do if it's less than $1,000 in revenue? What will I do if it's more than $1,000 in revenue? What will I do if it's just right? If it was that Goldilocks answer and I hit what I wanted to hit. So you think about those actions. Using like an example of an opt-in rate might be, I'm going to go to Google Analytics to find out what my opt-in rate is. And if it's less than 30%, I'm going to go back to, let's say, Facebook, if that's my lead source is, and I'm going to try to tweak that campaign because it probably should be higher. Or if it's more than 50%, that's also bad. A conversion rate can be too bad because it means probably the audience isn't scaling. It's the exact right people. And I need to maybe tweak that audience a little bit to open it up so the conversion rate comes back in line and I net out more leads. Or if the answer is, hey, maybe it's 35%, it's right where I want it to be, then it's go feed the budget, get more scale, maybe open up some new traffic sources, maybe come up with another opt-in. So it's a different way into the brand. And you start thinking about those actions that you're going to take. So now when you come into Google Analytics is what we call going into, you never go into Google Analytics unarmed. You have to go in armed with questions and what actions you're going to take based upon the answers you get. That's the plan. That's it. That's all you have to do. So now when you go into Google Analytics, you can look at a report, something like what they call the source medium report. It's kind of the one report that rules them all, in my opinion. It can tell you most of the answers and you can measure for it. And you'll see, oh, okay, it's exactly the number of goals I'm achieving. I'm doing exactly what I need to do. Go scale. I already know the actions I'm going to take. I don't have to analyze anything. I just read the story that's there. So that's the very most important step that people skip because they don't understand how to plan, right? They may have heard they need to have a plan, but they haven't planned. So it's questions, information, and then actions.
Okay, that's a great framework. Let's take it back to just basics. What is Google Analytics and why is that the place that you use to get the data? Let's just educate the listeners here on those basics, and then we'll dive into maybe using me as a case study because I've dived into Google Analytics and I'll share with you some of my thoughts when I dived in there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what is Google Analytics and how do we use it and why are we using it?
So when you're trying to figure out what your measurement machinery is doing, right? What your marketing is doing, you need to do three things. You have to collect the information of how it's working. You have to store that information somewhere. And then you have to have reports that spit out that basically say, here's what's working, here's what's not. So you have to sort of collect, store, and report. And you need a platform that can do that. And that's why Google Analytics exists. So Google Analytics is a platform that collects what's happening, all the behaviors that are happening on the site. It stores them in its database for you. And then it has these pre-configured reports that will then tell you, hey, here's the story. Here's what's going on of users and how they're using the site. That's the beauty of Google Analytics. It collects the information, stores it, and builds reports for you. And it's doing that automatically without you really having to do too much in the beginning. So that's primarily what it's for. Obviously for digital measurement of the website. The beauty of it, why you should use it, is because it is free. It is incredibly robust and it is free. But did I mention it is free? Right? Like that is the real reason. We're all small businesses. I am included in that bucket as well. I don't want to go spend $150,000 a year for an enterprise level analytics platform because I don't need all of that. You can use these free platforms like Google Analytics and it's everywhere. Everything integrates with it. Everybody knows how to use it. It's universal in the world, right? Worldwide, everything does it. So no matter what, it's simple to activate it and to start to use it so you can eventually get more from it.
Okay. And your examples were like if there's a shopping cart or it's SaaS, does this work for service-based business owners where they're doing blogs or they're podcasting and they say, hey, join my email list or hey, book a discovery call or a consultation. We can still use Google Analytics to track that whole path of our ideal client.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the main reasons that you and I are speaking now is because years ago, I got invited on a podcast and I went on that podcast because it's like, oh, it's nice to be a guest on a podcast. And so I did it and I measured for the results of that because I know how to do that. Right. So we measured for the results of that. And so I saw all of a sudden podcast traffic coming in a couple of days later. I was like, oh, that's cool. That podcast generated traffic for my website, which is service-based. We're a training company. So we train people to do things and they were coming in, they were creating their memberships, they were becoming leads, they were buying products later, totally because of that podcast. If I didn't measure properly, I would never have known that was happening. But the key was months later when I looked back at our traffic and I still saw that podcast generating traffic. Now it wasn't generating as much, but it was generating a decent amount. And then in my head, I went, wow, this is kind of like SEO. Podcasts, if I do a bunch of them, it's like being on a million stages all at the same time forever, essentially, if you build up a podcast enough. And what if we built that out as a channel? Because we see podcast traffic works because they've had time now. The person listening to this knows more about me now than they did 5 minutes ago. They'll know more about what we do and how we can help them 10 minutes from now.
That's right.
So they have a better relationship. So they're coming into the site with a different expectation versus cold traffic where they randomly come across it in Google Organic or something like that. So that's why podcast is a channel for us because we were able to measure for it and we are a service business. So that was just a perfect layup question for me because I'm like, absolutely yes. And we do it for speaking. When I'm on stage speaking, I measure and I can tell if speaking traffic is working. When I do a webinar, I can tell if webinar traffic is working. And I can see how it coordinates with email traffic and everything else so I can coordinate my traffic sources. So that's the beauty of this platform. I use the same free version that everybody else does. I just know a little bit more about how to use it to get the answers that I get versus what somebody else might be trying to do on their own. But it's absolutely possible to use this platform to do that. 100%.
Right. Okay. So I loved everything about that because where my head went is, as a small business owner, you hear all the different strategies that could work for you. And then we get that shiny object of like, Sally's doing podcast interviews. I should do podcast interviews. So-and-so's doing blogging. I should do blogging. Oh my gosh, podcasting. Who thought that? And then all of a sudden, we've got our fingers in everything and we don't really know what's working or not. And we may just go off of our gut, but that's not really an accurate.
Exactly right.
It's not really accurate, right? And so if we bring this back to, okay, we want an investment in our time. If we're going to take the time to go on as a guest as a podcast or speak on a stage, we need to know that the return on the investment is on the upside. And the only way we know that is through measuring.
That's exactly right.
I also like to say that when I help my clients do their quarterly planning and yearly planning, I ask 3 questions. One of the questions is, what is working? Right? Because we get so busy and excited about the new things, we drop the thing that's working, but sometimes we can't even answer that question because we're not tracking our data, right?
Right.
All right. So then 2 is what could work. That's adding to it. And then the third one is what is not working. And again, the data doesn't lie. And so if we have a way of determining what's not working and what is working, that should influence how you're planning your next quarter and your next year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
That's exactly right. And if I can tie in, because especially being a productivity podcast, because I'm also a productivity geek, like you and I can talk for hours about this stuff, I'm sure. But when it comes to Google Analytics, how I've tied Google Analytics into kind of what you're talking about. So measurement done well will tell you what's working and what's not. Measurement done very well will tell you what's coming next. So you can forecast. And it goes to your point about planning out the future. So what I will do is on my planners, we'll have out, okay, here's what the revenue is. But the revenue is not the goal in and of itself, because I know how things work, because I know my results, I know my how, specifically the how steps. I am forecasting out the plan for, we're going to have 500 page views to this product. Of those, I know, because I know how the funnel works, I know my numbers, I know what's working, what's not. I know maybe 10% of those are going to go to the cart. I also know 40% of those are going to close. And I know my average ticket. So now I can predict my revenue. And all I have to do as a manager now is manage to the activity, which is the important thing. That's the thing I can control and influence. I manage the activities of page views. More importantly, I have taught the marketing department to do that. So they look at the reports and they go, not did we hit our revenue numbers or not? Because I honestly don't care about that. That's just a symptom of a successful system that's executed. What they look at is, did we hit the activities? Did we hit the number of pages we were supposed to hit, that we were supposed to deliver? If not, why not? If we did hit them, did they go to the cart as expected? If not, why not? And if they did go to the cart, did they check out at the average amount? If not, why not? And then they're doing that constantly. They do that every single week. So they're constantly understanding the conversation that's happening between the website and the customers. And they're always improving things and they're learning things. And it's because, to your point, they're planning ahead and they're measuring against their plan. So that's what tells them where to optimize. It becomes a pretty simple system.
Yeah. So the 3 questions I was referencing, I call a feedback loop. And you just shared your feedback loop.
That's
and your
exactly
team
right.
is doing it every week of like, if not, why not? If not, why not? And always tweaking and pivoting to improve the numbers, or at least get to your target numbers for each of the levels. Okay. All right. So let's jump into Amber decided that she was going to look at Google Analytics.
Okay.
The first time, this was years ago. So the first time I jumped in, I was like, what?
Exactly right. That's so true. I did too.
I can actually.
I want to emphasize, I did too. I was the same way. Everybody does that. That's how you know you're doing it right. The first time you're like, what is this?
Right. And I'm a numbers person, but what I was saying what to was my website was being spammed by bots.
Yeah.
And so it was such a mess. I couldn't even pull, I tried to figure out how to pull out the bots and, block out countries and different stuff so I can at least get the right, what I felt would be the most accurate data.
Yep.
And that was frustrating. And so then I, put pause on it, came back to it. And now how I use it is to not at the level that you're saying, which I'm really excited. And maybe I'm selfishly interviewing you for me, but now we use it to say, okay, so what blog posts and podcasts get the most page views to try and figure out what are they searching, and then back that up into, well, what did they search to get there so that we can double down on those topics, because just because I want to talk about something I think is valuable, it may not be what, the audience wants to hear more of. So we try to use the data to say, what is future content creation going to look like based on history.
Yep.
But that's about all we've gotten.
Yeah. And that's still a great start. But I want to reframe a little bit what Google Analytics is, and not just analytics, but measurement in general, taking a bigger step at just what measurement is for. So if I had a shoe store and you come into my shoe store and you're like, hey, I'm here to, I'm going to say something like, hey, welcome to the shoe store. What can I help you find? And you're going to hopefully say something like, I need sneakers. And then I'm going to go, okay, well, let me show you where the sneakers are. What are you trying to do them for? Blah, blah, blah. And we'll go through and hopefully that leads to a transaction and you purchase the shoes, right? But there will be a very natural conversation where I am listening to you and I am responding based upon what you're telling me, right? I'm changing how I respond based upon telling you. I may have looked at you and be like, oh, she's clearly here for high heels, but you say sneakers. So I'm like, nope, I'm not going to show her high heels anymore. I'm going to show sneakers, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the process of listening and responding, a very natural conversation. Offline, this is normal. Online, that conversation is generally ignored by most companies. But there is still a conversation happening right now on both our sites, and everybody's listening and watching this on their sites. There is a conversation happening between the users and the website. And it's dangerous if we don't know what that conversation is. And that's all measurement is us being able to listen to their side of the conversation. So the better you get at measurement and using the tools and everything that's out there, you don't have to be the best to start. You just have to be good enough to get going, right? But you just start listening, and then you get better at listening. And when you hear their side of the conversation, you will naturally change your marketing, which is how the whole measurement marketing concept comes together. It's listening and responding. So measurement is how we listen using tools like Google Analytics. Marketing, changing the subject lines or the headlines or whatever the thing is that we're doing, the offers, that's changing it to keep the conversation going in the direction we want it to go. And that's what you're saying, is you're saying, I'm using Google Analytics to listen to the conversation that the users are having with the site, in particular to answer the question around how do we gear our content better to find more focused topics that are going to be more useful and engaging. And you're using it exactly for that. That's perfect use of it. Now, what will start to happen is you will start to ask other questions. And that's where you go, well, maybe we're not listening for that. So you start to learn how to use the tool a little bit differently so that it does listen for that. And now you've improved your measurement implementation. And that's a normal journey. It is, people think that Google Analytics needs to be just like set up once and it's done. And it's never like that. There's a journey. Like we call it the cave, the valley, and the summit. You'll go through these stages. And it's important to give yourself permission to do that. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed by everything that's back there and you try to do too much too soon. So the conversation is super important. And I think it's a great sign that you're already using it to listen for that conversation.
Okay. And so one thing that you said that I was, the ears perked up to, was that you'll start asking different questions, more questions, right?
Yes.
And, I'm thinking where you gave a couple examples of sources where you can find out if someone's landing on your website from, right? Mm-hmm. So for me and my team, I feel like we spend so much time on social media. And if you ask me in my gut, I'm like, it doesn't work and I don't like it. And I do it because everybody does it. Yeah. But I can't really tell you if it's working, right? So for example, if I'm doing a call to action organically, I'm not talking paid social media. So I do a call to action on Instagram or on Facebook, we can track that onto the website and track.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So then based on that, I would be able to determine how much time I want my team or myself to invest in social media next year, or figure out what's broken specifically, fix it, and then double down on that.
Exactly right. Yes. So the way to think about this is, like, we get asked a lot where people, maybe students are coming in, especially if it's a larger company, they will definitely do this, but even smaller companies, because I get it. People are coming in, they're like, we're just trying to figure out how people are using the blog. The very first question I ask them is, how are they supposed to be using the blog? And immediately it's a blank face. They've never thought about it. And that's normal. It is normal. If you think about it, like, people ask you, well, I'm just trying to figure out people moving through our store, or I'm just trying to figure out people using the homepage. And I repeat the same thing. How are they supposed to move through the store? How are they supposed to go through the homepage? I don't know. And they think it's a chicken and egg thing, but it's not. You always start with, here's what's supposed to happen. Is this working like it's supposed to? And you measure for it to see. So in your case with Instagram, you might say, well, our hypothesis, our theory, our plan is that we're going to put a call to action on Instagram. I have X amount of followers. 1% of those will click through in the next 24 hours, and that should generate this many page views. And then let's pretend it's an opt-in form you're sending them to. 30 to 35% will opt in to our email list from that. And that's how we're going to generate 200 leads tomorrow. And then you measure against it. You take the action, you measure against it. So did 1% of the people come through Instagram? If not, now you go, okay, maybe there's something I could do on the Instagram side of things to tweak it. If it did, okay, they made it to the page. Did they opt in? No, they didn't. All right. Maybe that's because there was a mismatch between Instagram, the expectation that was set on that side, and the page and how it matched the expectation on its side. Right. But you can measure for it. And that's the beauty of it, is you're always going like, oh no, it's this. And there's no drama. And that's my favorite part about measurement systems in general. If you're doing them well and following the framework, there's no drama. There's no guessing. There's no random acts of marketing. It's just your customers saying, I don't see it. That's not good for me. Could you try this instead? And you go, sure, because they're the customer. They're the ones who can tell us what the answers are. They're the only ones who can tell. But if we're not using measurement to listen for their conversation, you won't hear it. They're telling it to you every day. But most companies aren't listening for it because they don't know they can with this. Right. So that's how we think about it, and why tools like this are so powerful to understand how to use.
Okay. You said no drama. When we put something out in the world and it doesn't sell, or the phone isn't ringing as often as we want, or someone's not coming in, our ideal clients aren't coming through the storefront, we can put a lot of stories around that.
Yes.
None of those could technically serve us, right? And so what you're saying is, let's see if any of those fancy stories we like to create in our heads are the truth or based on the data, right?
Right. That's exactly right. Because so, for example, we went through a very similar process recently. We had a boot camp that we were launching. It was our first official boot camp that we've done. It's for a platform called Data Studio, which is like for dashboarding, reporting, again, another free platform that Google created. So we thought, well, there's probably a need out there for not just the digital courses to kind of do it on your own, but kind of a hybrid where you have the courses and there's workshops and there's cadence and the instructors can help you with it, right? Yeah. So we call it this boot camp thing. We have a forecast for it, but I'm guessing because I've never done this product before. So I have best practices in my head about how our marketing works typically, but I am guessing on this product. And we knew, because we understand our open rates and our click-through rates, we knew, because we're sending this specifically for our list. So we knew how many emails we were going to send. We knew the average clicks. So we could predict, we could forecast how many page views we were going to have. We're like, cool, we're going to hit that number, no problem, because we know our numbers that way. The trick was how many are going to go from the offer to the cart. Now, typically for us, it's around 8 to 12%. It just has been for years. And for direct response, it's typically what happens. So we figured, okay, we'll go conservative. I'm going to go 8% because that's pretty low for us. So 8% of people are going to go to the cart, and then of those, half buy for whatever their ticket is. So we went through there. We set this thing up. They pushed go. Within 4 hours, we knew we were completely off on this offer page because we go to the page, it had sent a bunch of traffic. We look at it. Instead of 8% going to the cart, we had 1% going to the cart, which was ridiculously bad. Now, there are two things that we do as a marketer when that happens is you look at this, you're like, oh my gosh, the offer's off. The expectation was off. Maybe should be changed. Maybe it's the design. It's a big wall of text. It was kind of ugly looking. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the headline. And that's what most marketers are then stuck to do, right? They sort of have to do that because they don't have visibility into how that page is doing its job. Now, I'm going to say that we do this because we do. But remember, this is because we've been doing this for a while. We have strong measurement muscles. So we've set up our company to do this. But this is absolutely something you can grow into pretty quickly is we measured that exact page because we wanted to know that we have the funnel that we're measuring, the customer journey, but we measured for that page to see what that page was saying back to people as they were using it. So here's what I mean by that. We measured the second the page load, which called the impression. We measured, are they there 10 seconds later? It's what we call introduced. So we knew that they were meant to stick around. We measured if they were interested in the message, which was scrolling halfway down and sticking around at least 45 seconds, spending some time. So those two things had to occur. Then we measured, did they literally look at the offer where the pricing table was? Did they look at that for at least 4 seconds, which was an investigating behavior? And then finally, did they click the button to initiate? And so this is what we call the eyes in the journey because it's impression, introduced, interested, investigated, initiate. So we have this little funnel that sort of shows us a funnel. So I look at the funnel immediately. Most importantly, the marketing team looks at the funnel. Immediately they go, everything's working except initiate. So what that means to them is everyone's spending time. They're staying on the page. They're even looking at the offer, but they are not clicking to even go to the cart because there's no value built properly. The page, they went too fast through it. They definitely explored it, but it was a wall of copy. It was an ugly, ugly looking page. Cause my thing is like, get it good enough to get going. I don't care if it's perfect. Like just get it out there. Yeah. We'll make it better later. Right. So we listen to feedback. Like you're saying, that feedback loop is super important. Success or failure doesn't exist. There's just feedback. So feedback comes back and it's the customer saying, I don't get it. I love the idea. Our click-through rates were like 5%. It was insane. It was so much higher than we thought it was going to be. And everybody was sticking through and participating with the message. Nobody was going to cart because they were going, I don't get it. I want to get it, but I don't get it. And that's what we heard. So our copywriting team go back, they switch designs, they add some images, they change some things to slow down, to emphasize, they add some sub-headlines to make sure if people are scanning that they're hitting the value points. Within hours, they send traffic again, fixes it. We're back to 8% because we listened to the customers who told us what to adjust on the page. And because we were measuring, we knew it was that page. That in my head, I always think about every page as a salesperson. That salesperson had a really, really bad script. They were talking way too fast and they were just not even caring about the customer and just going, yeah, do you want to buy it? And the customer's like, well, maybe, but what else? Tell me more. And sales page wasn't doing that. So we slowed them down. We changed the design. Within hours, we were able to fix it. So that's the beauty of measurement is most other organizations would have had the drama conversation. What do you think? Or I told you it was a bad day to send emails. You shouldn't have done that. Or I knew we should have done a webinar in the first place. And everybody would go a million ways because there's no way to prove what's happening. But when you measure properly, you can see it. And then all of your resources get focused, especially when it comes to being productive. All your limited resources are focused on the spot that is more than likely going to move the needle for you.
Oh my gosh. I'm like just literally holding my breath because I'm thinking of how this has played out in my own business is that it can get so frustrating when we tell ourselves like, oh, they just don't want what I have to offer, right?
Right.
And then how does that move us into action? So I always talk about the mindset of taking action. And when we're stuck in that kind of drama, that doesn't make me want to get up and fix the sales page.
Right. That's exactly right.
It doesn't make me want to get up and like adjust the pricing or add images. It's just like, you throw your hands up, and that's on a good day that can happen. Yeah. And so when I'm hearing you say like this is based on not just, general data, but specific. When I think of what it takes to get someone to your consultation page or your discovery call or the work with me page, I'm just throwing out like the key pages that you're, no matter what we're doing out there, whether it's podcasting or blogging or paid ads or organic ads, like I'm thinking of all this stuff. The point is for them to figure out if they want to work with you.
That's exactly right.
That's a lot of energy, time, and resources that are being put out on the front end. And then to get all there and find out that you are missing images and like subheaders to provide the value is mind-blowing to me, because what then happens is we stop doing the thing that was working, but we didn't know it was working.
Right.
That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's all about listening to that conversation 100%. There's, I think a lot of people get confused with analytics because they maybe aren't numbers people, quote unquote. Like I'm like you, like I'm comfortable with numbers, but I don't want to spend like my data. I don't look at numbers. I look at shapes, right? I look at data, I look at funnels, and I can tell by the shape of the funnel what the issue is to take. And I've trained the team to do that. So I think about dashboards and reports more like your car dashboard. You should look at your car dashboard. You know what your speed is, and do you hit the brake or hit the gas? You don't have to think about it or analyze it. And I think marketers' reports and dashboards should be the same thing. And Google Analytics can do that with a few tweaks of how you think about it, right? But part of that is moving from this concept of, like you said, accuracy a few times. We call accuracy the A word. We won't even say it here because I don't think there is such a thing as accuracy, but there is a useful truth. And the useful truth is the trends and patterns. And then what I'm talking about when I say, well, 8 to 12% of people go from offer to cart. When I say, well, roughly 35 to 45% are going to complete the cart of this average ticket range or all the other stuff, these ranges, they're just trends and patterns. And that's when I have a trend and a pattern that I can rely on because I found it from Google Analytics. And if I found it from Google Analytics, it means it came from the customers. So it's their trends and patterns. I have something useful. So even if analytics isn't quote unquote accurate, it is incredibly useful because I can use the trends and patterns back there to forecast and say, well, my other offers all work like this. My new offer should also work like this. Then you set up the measurement for it, push it out into the world, measure against what your forecasts are. Is it working the way it's supposed to? Right. And if it is, more traffic. That's the thing, right? You can max it out. If it's not, you'll see exactly the spot and you don't have to guess anymore. You just focus on putting your resources to solve the issue.
Okay. So I think we're all like, okay, obviously this is important, but the next big elephant in the room is, and how much time is this going to take? Yeah. What can a normal person, you said, you do this for normal people. We're talking to normal business owners. Yeah. Can a normal business owner get into Google Analytics and learn this?
Yeah, it's the short answer. Obviously, I'm going to be incredibly biased because it's what I do for a living. But the short answer is yes. Anyone can learn how to do it. The secret sauce to it is how you learn, and that's kind of where I think our teaching is maybe a little different because, and it probably similar to yours, because it is a system. It's the framework that you use that really opens the tool. It's the mindset is the first thing, which is first just focus on the conversation and then measure for that, and it becomes easier. But when it comes to a tool like Google Analytics, the way that I like thinking about Google Analytics is if I give you like a kid's book, like Goldilocks and Three Bears, and I had you say, read this children's book, you probably could read it just fine. If I take that book back, I rip out the pages, I rip those into pieces, smash it between the covers and say, cool, read me this book. Could you read it? And the answer is yes, you could. There's a lot of people thinking no. That's what they normally think. But I didn't change your ability to read. You can totally read. It's going to take a lot longer for you to read it. Right. And Google Analytics, by default, without any setup or customization, if you just use it as it is out of the box, it is a bunch of ripped up pieces of paper. It's a bunch of ripped up story bits. So when you get back there, and this is why it feels like that. So when you get
That's
back there
where
and
the
you're like,
what comes
that's exactly
in.
it. Because everybody comes back to them and they're like, I know there's a story here. I just cannot see it.
Right.
And that's not your fault. It is because it's a bunch of ripped up pieces that were never organized properly to tell a story. So I'm going to give you the first, and obviously planning. I'll assume everybody should plan and go through Kia. Think about the questions you're trying to answer, results and how questions. Think about the information you need to make sure is being measured to get answers to that. And think about the actions you're going to take based upon that, right? So you definitely have to go through that process. But the very first thing everybody should be doing in Google Analytics is setting goals. You want to measure for the results that you're trying to achieve. And analytics needs to know what you're trying to achieve. So you go back there, setting up a goal is very easy. Anybody can Google that. There's a million YouTube videos. Ours will be out there. There's a million others that'll be out there. There's a billion blog posts that talk about how to do it. The how to set up a goal is not hard. It's what should a goal be? So the process to follow, what we call ACE. So you measure, you think about a customer journey, right? Just like we were talking about, like maybe with our boot camp or any products that you have. And you know, first thing to measure for is A, which is aware. Are they aware of the customer journey that I want them to be aware of? So for us, maybe if it's a Measurement Marketing Academy, which is our flagship training program, it would be that offer page, the actual Academy sales page. When that opens, that triggers an awareness goal for us in Google Analytics. Then it's the C. Did they complete the customer journey I wanted them to complete? So for us, in our case, it would be like the thank you page of the Academy. So did they complete that journey? And then there's the E, which is engagement. Did they engage along the way? And depending upon the journey, you might have a few of those steps, but keep it simple. Let's say it's a typical, like in our case, direct response type model. So it's offer page is aware. When they complete, it's the thank you page, and the engagement is the cart page. So we measure for the engagement steps. So the beauty of this is you can then start measuring your traffic and you can start tying it to results. And what you will find now, because you're listening, you will find that certain traffic sources are better at achieving certain things. So Google Organic might be incredible at triggering awareness of a product, but it's horrible at closing the deal. Facebook retargeting now is really good about getting them to become a lead to get into the email list. And then email is incredible at getting them to actually complete the journey. And now you start to have in Google Analytics, a story starts to appear where there was none before. Because now you can tie traffic to results of how the customer's moving through your pipelines or through your customer journeys that you have set up. And then you start getting, and that's the fastest, easiest thing to get set up in Google Analytics is goals. Because you can set up what they call destination goals. They're very simple. Again, Google doesn't take long to learn it. And it's not the setting up that's the hard part. It's what should a goal be? That's the hard part. And how do you use it? And if you follow that ACE model, it will help you at least get good enough to get going. Super important. Get good enough to get going. You can always come back and make it better later, and you will. But you get good enough to get going. You see progress. You start seeing that visibility, that useful truth. And you're like, oh my gosh, there's a big difference between Facebook and Google and my emails. And then you start getting into it. Now you're participating with Google Analytics and you're in the story a little more. And it becomes a little bit more fun. Now you're willing to give a little more time because you're getting a payoff from it. And now you stop asking questions around like, how long does it take me to learn this tool? Because you get to use the tool and you start to understand the power of it. And you don't think about it in time anymore. It's just, I just use it. It's just like, how long does it take to learn WordPress? It's always an ongoing, like it always is changing, right?
Yes.
And that's what it is with Google Analytics. So it's not just how much time do I spend with it, but you can get very quick. You get into see a report, see it, be like, cool. It worked exactly like it's supposed to. Send more traffic. Or nope, this piece fell off. They weren't as engaged as they should have been. Let's make sure that we tweak that traffic source a little bit. And then it just gets better and better and better as you level up and get going.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the person that's like, I hear you say that's easy. It's just not my cup of tea. But now they're aware that there's even someone out there, a company out here that can help them with this. And so I was on your website and I did see the training, but I also saw like done for you or done with you. And I just want to explore it, not, and for anyone that's listening, not as a commercial, but really like, you know, if you're listening and you're like, I need this, and then you're telling yourself, I don't have the bandwidth to do this, don't let that stop you. There are other options. And that's what I want to share. So talk to us about what that looks like if someone wanted to say, all right, I know I need it. I know I don't want to be the one to do it. And how do I ask for help?
So the first thing I'll say first off, and I have this conversation with all clients that we speak with that are coming on, is I believe measurement should be a part of the culture. Right? Companies should, brands, every organization should have measurement and its culture. And that's going to be a big shift. That's going to happen more and more and more. And it already is with brands. They're thinking about measurement differently. They're thinking about the conversation because the tool itself isn't the secret sauce. It's how you think about measurement is the secret sauce. And that starts with the proper mindset, which is understanding there's a conversation that we're measuring for. That's what we're trying to understand, is a conversation happening between the users of the site. That's always the first thing. Try to get it in-house. So that said, there's 3 different ways to do that. So if you have plenty of time, then it's do it yourself, which some people will. They have more time than money and get the do it yourself training. They can go through it. We know that, I think there's YouTube videos out there. You can watch stuff for free. So it's not the information that is kind of the secret. But like in our case, we've created a platform that has instructors, because we know that you're going to watch a video, go, well, that kind of worked for me, or I kind of get it. And you want somebody to talk to. So you can send a video or screenshots into the instructors. The instructors send videos or screenshots back. They can discuss strategy. They can discuss tactical things that you're trying to do, and they can help you get sort of unstuck along the way. So that's kind of why we created this do-it-yourself platform.
Nice.
But it is kind of done with you, with the instructors, right? But at that level. Then there's the done with you stuff, which is what we call private guided training. For us, that's typically when you have a team that needs to be trained because they get assigned an instructor. And that's when you have additional money, because it's a little more for something like that, but you have less time. You need to get it. You need accountability, and you don't want to like assign a course to yourself and then you never use the course type of thing. Because that happens sometimes. I've done it. So, but you want accountability, and it's like, okay, I have an instructor call. There's going to be a workshop call in 2 hours, and we got to get through this course to make sure we have a quality conversation. But and it gets the team done. So that's a way to still install measurement culture in your organization. But again, a little more money, but a lot less time to get it done. And then you have this do-it-yourself level. This is where you just don't have the muscle on your team, kind of to your set. There's no bandwidth. I have nobody that can do this. I'm already maxed out, and I need the additional muscle. I got to bring somebody else in who does it. The only thing I would caution people on, it is obviously the highest price point, but it's also, you're reliant on the vendor. And we have certified measurement marketers that will do that work. They are great organizations. Just don't think that you're going to go in there and have somebody set up your goals in Google Analytics, because that's not measurement. You can do that in YouTube in 20 minutes of work. That's the part's not hard. It's thinking about measurement as a culture and having somebody who thinks about measurement as a culture for you. And you bring on that vendor, just expect to have them as part of your team for a while. That's how you look at it. And if you go into a vendor relationship like that, where it's like, hey, they're going to be on for a year or two, then you're going to have an incredible experience. If you bring on a vendor to set up analytics so that you can use it a month later, it's going to be a crash and burn. I wouldn't even worry about it at that point. But otherwise, if you do it for the long term, done for you is an incredible value as well.
So I love that. So you're bringing them on as a consultant because it's a continual conversation, because it's always tweaking, because your business is always changing. It's an ongoing relationship.
Right. That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. All right. Excellent. What did I not ask you that you think we should know about measurement and marketing?
I would say I'm going to give you the biggest productivity tip I have. How's that?
I will take it.
The biggest productivity tip I have. We'll stick with the podcast here. So the biggest one I have, so what we call it, something we teach is we call it TBV, which stands for trust but verify. So most people will come in and they will trust that they do it, like even a measurement setup, they will trust they do it correctly. If they build a web page or a funnel, they will trust it's built correctly. Our team does that. They will build something, they will trust it's built correctly. So what they do is they're going in and they double check it. And we've asked for this, like sometimes, and everyone's been through this, I get it, where you do something, you push it live and you're like, oh, that didn't work at all. What happened? How did we let this go through? Because nobody double checked it. So you say, well, let's double check our work, right? We want to do that. So you trust that it's done correctly and you go back and you double check. The problem is they're looking that it's done correctly. They know they did it correctly. So they trust it's done correctly. They go back to double check to make sure that it's been done correctly. And the reason I'm emphasizing that word is because that's all they're looking for is what's correct. They look for what's correct. So trust but verify, what it means is you trust it was done correctly, but immediately you turn the hat and you're like, and you become the biggest skeptic ever. And you're like, I know it's been done incorrectly. And I'm going to go verify that, which means you verify for incorrect. You look for the errors. Because when you look for the errors, you all of a sudden see the obvious stuff. But if you double check that you've done it correct, it's really hard to see that. Which is another reason why we have other people TBV sometimes. We're like, okay, I built it. I've seen it a million times. Right. I can no longer see the error. You TBV it because you come at it skeptically. I know and we play a game. We're like, there's 13 errors in this funnel. You go find them. And they go to look for the obvious errors. And they're like, oh, you forgot to connect the cart. The wrong buy button. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this because I've been clicking on it in the admin mode and didn't realize I did it wrong. And all of these obvious things that will cause drama and slowness to market in an organization can be dramatically simplified when it comes to using TBV as a process.
Okay, I love that. I can't tell you how many times, like my marketing manager or content manager, she will write an email and then I review it. I give it back to her. Nobody saw the blatant error of words actually missing. And she'll be like, I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, we read it, we checked for errors. And yet, when I see it, when I am getting it in my inbox along with thousands of other people, when I glance at it,
when
and
it's
I'm like,
too late.
The subject line has a typo. How did we miss that? But it's because we read it or we saw it the way it should work.
Yeah.
And that's how the funnels do too, right? Like, you know how it should work. So you're assuming, like you said, and then it's the obvious that gets missed. Okay.
And that's it. And I'll give you a really quick thing that I found super useful for that, especially emails, is read them bottom up when you TBV, because you're not reading for the messaging anymore when you're checking stuff like that. So when you read it bottom up, it breaks the pattern that your brain has, because your brain is used to filling in the blanks because it's used to going top down. So it fills in the words and the spaces and the grammar. But if you read it bottom up, it forces your brain to pay more attention. So you're more likely to see the obvious misspellings and grammar stuff.
I'm literally going to use that immediately. I can't tell you how many times we read emails. So we are definitely going to do that. That's
bottom up.
Great hack. Bottom up, not for content, just strictly for, I guess, to make sure the words are there.
That's exactly right. Yeah. You see the obvious
even little stuff like in Google Docs, it's linked. And then by the time it gets into our system, we're like, how did that get unlinked? It was just a copy and paste, right?
Right. Yep. It's so true.
Okay. All right. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and talking to us all about the measurement, the marketing, the data, the no drama. I personally took a lot away from here, and I kind of got even more excited about, what's possible with Google Analytics again. So I super appreciate that. Now, if my listeners would love to hear more about you, reach out to you and connect with you, how do they do that?
Absolutely. So measurementmarketing.io is our main site. So anybody can go there and learn more about the products and services that we have. If you want some free training, we have the YouTube channel. So measurementmarketing.io/YouTube will take you directly there. Just subscribe to that channel. Every week we do new training. So some of it's getting started topics, some more advanced stuff, but you can get an idea of kind of what's back there. And again, totally free because it's on YouTube. And then if it's something where you're like, okay, I definitely know I want this and I want to get the free training and you want a bunch of tools, because we've got a lot of tools that we've developed for our members. We actually give out those tools to anybody that wants them. We call it it's our toolbox membership. So it's completely free, just a name and an email, and it'll set up your account for you. So if you go to measurementmarketing.io/straight talk, it'll take you to there. And then one of the tools is a traffic tracking toolkit or a dashboard planner, a productivity optimization planner. There's all sorts of stuff that are back there that help you think about measurement, give you some frameworks for measurement. And if it makes sense later, you can join the academy if that's there. But either way, those tools and the free training will at least get you started. So again, measurementmarketing.io/straight talk.
Excellent. Well, I will be sure to be opting into that toolbox as well as linking it out into our show notes to make sure everyone can grab that. Chris, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you're sharing with the listeners of Productivity Straight Talk.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks again for having me, Amber.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Productivity Straight Talk this week. I've really enjoyed you listening to today's episode, and I hope you have found it to be valuable. I hope that it has invited you to look at your marketing in a different lens, through the lens of how can you track the activity? How can you track the data to ensure that your strategies are having the impact that you want them to have? I hope that you leave today's episode and decide that you may need to track this on your own. What are those next steps? Or perhaps you say, I need some training. What are those next steps? What is the very next step to start tracking your marketing efforts in your business? And as a reminder, you can keep it really simple. You can start very, very simple, elementary, and then build upon it over time until you have a very detailed dashboard of all your marketing numbers. But don't let that stop you from getting started and just start tracking. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. That is my encouragement. That is my hope for you today after listening to Chris and I chat all about marketing measurements. A couple reminders as we wrap up. Chris offered a free resource, and so you can go directly to the link he shared with us, or you can head on over to amberdelagarza.com/224. That's 224, and we'll have all the links there and available for you in the show notes. And lastly, if you have not already checked out Leverage Lab, I invite you to head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab and see if this program is a fit for where you want to go. Is it a fit for the support that you need to get to where you want to go? I really look forward to working with you and supporting you in 2022. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.